Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our small footprint. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Now, it is 5:30 in the morning that I'm doing this video, and my camera is not liking it because normally it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun is that way, and now it's right behind me. So, you know, great. I filmed this voiceover at 5 o'clock yesterday, 5 p.m. yesterday, and the sound was off. I really need to get myself a wireless mic system, but it's just one of those expenses that I keep on putting off. But I might do it while I'm in Brisbane, see if JB Hi-Fi will price match the Rode ME mic system that I want, and yeah, we'll see there, because this is I've got a shotgun mic on top of my main camera, but the thing is that I carry the main camera with the tripod and everything in and out of the kitchen and that to do these voiceovers, and I think a cable must have got knocked, or I don't know, because when the screen pops out too, it pops out where the mic is, so it's possible it knocks it there. Anyway, I did the whole, 35-minute voiceover, got inside last night at 10, it was 8 or 9 o'clock by the time I sat down to edit it, and it was all static. And I hate redoing voiceovers because I never, I have that whole thing, oh, did I already say that? Sort of because of the previous one. But anyway, we're going to do it because I wanted to get this out today. Because now I'm going to have to go over what I said yesterday and hope that I cover everything. It is Sunday. It was Saturday when I was doing this, getting it out Sunday morning. And then today I'm going to do a bit of a video about an update video, show the gardens. We're finally getting the pool set up, and I got a sponsor for a pool vacuum cleaner, so we're going to open that all up and get that in the pool. The pool isn't full yet, it's a ongoing process out here, but we also had chicks and stuff to show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into this voiceover, and this voiceover for food this is still the August shop, and it covers around about a week of food, because there is some just stills in here rather than video, because we had a bit of a big week and I just didn't turn the camera on. So we're going to go through this week worth of food, and then if I think of anything that I might have missed, I'll come back at the end. But we'll get into it. So this is I think it's part 4, but I'm really not keeping count this month, of food prep, preservation, meal planning and things like that for the 2-month period that the shopping was in August. So on the last video I ended up saying that I was going to show you the sausage stuffing the next video, because I finished off the mince and the mince all went in the fridge, and then I need to do the sausage stuffing. Except that when I pulled the footage up for the sausage stuffing, I think I must have turned the camera off when I shifted it. So I set the mincer up for us to work on it, but it's a 2-person job. So I got the mincer set up, I got my casings soaked for half an hour, and then I run water through them to get as much salt off them as possible, because they just arrive salted, so you just store them in the fridge salted, and when you want them you rinse them off to use them. I fed all the casings onto the sausage stuffing tube, and then Darryl comes to help me fill them, because you really need someone to be pushing the meat through while the other person is guiding the sausages into the casing, because you need to put a little bit of backward tension on the sausages to get them nice and full without being so full you can't twist them. So you need to be able to keep them at a consistent sort of a thickness, and that really takes someone else pushing the meat through. We did have a vertical sausage stuffer previously, which works really well because you can fill the hopper with 5 kilos of meat, but the seal went on it, and the place I bought the hopper from doesn't sell spare parts, so I need to either buy a new one or see if I can find a spare part somewhere that will fit it that isn't necessarily for it, so we're still working on that. But the Lavelle works fine, it's just a little bit more long-winded and a little bit more fiddly, because you have to keep on pushing that meat through, so you have to be careful for air bubbles and stuff, but it works perfectly well. And so Darryl pushes the meat through while I guide the casings, and we just fill it that way. Now, the other thing with the vertical one is that you do have to emulsify your mince. So you mince it the first time, marinate it, mince it like I did, and then you either have to run it through the mincer again, or you have to emulsify it with a mixer or something, because the sausages, they need to be emulsified for the sausages. But when doing it through the sausage stuffer tube in the Lavelle, what happens is that when you first mince it, you've got a 4-fin blade and a little tiny hold plate, and that's what the mince is going through. The cat's wrapping itself around the tripod, so, and then when you're putting it through the sausage tubing, though, you have a 2-fin blade and a big wide open hold mincing plate, and that works quite well because it emulsifies it as you're filling the tubes. So you don't have to do that double step. So once we got them all full, every time I show making sausages on video, and I'll try and put a link in the description to one of the videos where I show the filling of them a little bit better. Someone comments that I should learn to twist them better. So I studied YouTube and managed to figure out how to twist them, got them all twisted in the proper way. But the only problem is that they're quite compact when they're twisted this way. So they're all touching each other. And what you got to do is put them in the fridge for 24 hours after you've stuffed them, just to let those skins sort of shrink wrap to the sausages a little bit, get rid of any air bubbles and that sort of thing. And they just store better. But putting them in the fridge in those bundles meant that they're all touching each other, which is fine because we're freezing them and it's okay. We're going to freeze them straight away. We're not going to store them in the fridge or anything. But I do need to sort of figure out a way to hang those bundles rather than have them laying on the racks over baking sheets if I'm going to have them in those bundle shapes. So in the end, I twisted them all into those bundles, stuck them on the racks over the baking trays, stuck them in the fridge for 24 hours, and it was fine. As I said, we're going to freeze these, not store them in any way, so it doesn't really matter that the skins are still a little bit tacky. The texture is a little bit different though. If you do let them dry out, I find that when you cook them, the casings have a little bit more of a crunchy bite to them, whereas if they stay wet, they tend to be a little more chewy, but it doesn't detract from the sausage at all. I tend to bag them in a few different quantities so I can use them in different ways. Sometimes I push the meat out of the skins and then sit there and go all that effort to put them in skins and then I'm going to pull it out. But it's really, that meat is really tasty in things like some sort of tomato-based pasta dishes and things like that. So sometimes I do that. But mostly we just eat them as cooked as they are, low and slow in a cast iron pan so that the fat is, so that they don't dry out too much, and try not to overcook them, and serve them with things like mashed potato, steamed veg and a bit of gravy. Because of the amount of time that the mince is sort of the cat just tried to jump onto the tool table. Because of the amount of time that the meat is out of a sealed bowl, we don't make sausages in the warmer weather. So this is probably the last time I'll make them until it cools down again in, say, 5 or 6 months, because it's just too hard. And the flies and the mince warms up, and so you're running already softened meat, which is a bit of a, and through that tube, which is making the mincer work harder and things like that, and it's just not worth it in the warmer weather. Maybe once we get the kitchen sealed off properly, but for the moment I tend not to make sausages in the warmer weather because it's too much juggling. For dinner that night we cooked up some of the sausages because I just made them, and that's what I like to do, as we discuss all the time. If I'm making some sort of food during the day, then I may as well eat it for dinner as well, rather than sticking it in the freezer and preparing something else. So I did some cheesy veg bakes with the broccoli and cauliflower that we got from the hamper this month. I filled 2 cast iron dishes with the veggies, and then I cooked a dairy-free white cheese sauce in the Thermomix to pour over them. I get asked about these sauces all the time, and yes, I am trying to get them up on the website. The biggest problem is that I tend to throw it in, so I've got to make it a few times to make sure that the quantities are correct. But they are on my list. There's like about 5 recipes that have been heavily requested to go on the website next, and they're on the list as the next ones. With this cheese sauce, I also add in some egg yolks at the end. So this is a coconut cream base, this one, but it doesn't have shredded cheese in it, obviously, and I don't use fake cheese. I use a little bit of nutritional yeast, but I don't use like fake cheeses or anything. So it sometimes, when you add it to the veggie bake and you bake it, because the water released from the cauliflower and the broccoli, it gets a little bit watery because they haven't got that cheese to create that emulsion of it. So what I do is I add some egg yolks at the end. So once it's cooked, so it all gets thrown into the Thermomix, it all gets cooked, and then at the end I turn the heat off, but I leave it spinning and I throw a few egg yolks in there and it mixes it through, and it's really lovely and rich. Gives it a little bit more nutritional density too, I suppose, but it's really rich and it doesn't tend to split with the liquid from the vegetables as it's cooking. Once I've put that in there, I use some breadcrumbs. So this is just like butts of sourdough bread that were in the freezer. Make them into breadcrumbs, add some seasoning. I think I used my bacon seasoning here, and sprinkle it all over the top, and then put some knobs of some sort of fat. I think I'm using Nuddle eggs here because that's what was out on the bench, and then bake it up, and it ends up with that crispy top because the butter helps the breadcrumbs crisp up. And then we just served it with the sausages. So the next week was my kind of hectic week. So we have 5:30 in the morning, there is birds everywhere. There is cockatoos squawking, there is some roosters squabbling. It is loud. I don't know how much you can hear, but it's loud. The next week was pretty hectic. So this is one that I pulled out some pictures to share, and I'm just going to give you some background on these pictures of what we did and how we did it, and make it so that it works, that you can see the process of things, even though I don't necessarily have footage for them. We had the twins' 10th birthday, so I made a cake. Now, I did show this on Facebook, so I made a 2-layer chocolate cake. I only have these 23 centimeter tins, which aren't ideal for this kind of thing, but it works fine. I do need to invest in some smaller tins, but storage is an issue until we get the kitchen sorted, so I keep on, you know, whatever. So this was just a dairy-free chocolate cake, a pretty standard recipe, and it's it's a lighter style mud cake sort of thing. Like, it's dense enough to hold together, but it's light enough that it's not overly rich. I did make icing for it. Now, I don't generally make icing for cakes because it just doesn't need it for our household. We're used to it, and it's just unnecessary. But for birthdays, I tend to go all out. So I did do a fudge buttercream type thing with melted chocolate chips, whipped through some icing sugar and some Nuttelex and stuff like that, and made it on. It was very rich to all our taste buds because we don't normally do that sort of thing. But they ate half of it for dinner, for dessert after dinner, and then they had the other half the next day, so that's fine. They'd requested hamburgers for dinner, but I didn't have any minced defrosted, but I did have buttermilk chicken in the freezer. So I made some slider rolls, and these are just my standard light brioche roll dough that I've got on the website, except that I put them in a high-sided pan, and that means that they're going to go up instead of flat, so they end up more slider-like, and they're smaller. I only do 60-75 grams per roll, so they end up smaller, higher buns, more like sliders. And then I just cooked the buttermilk chicken, so that was frozen from previous. Just goes on a rack over a tray in the oven, and it cooks up beautifully. And then we had it with some mayo and lettuce and tomato and things like that come in the hamper as well. And just had buttermilk chicken sliders with chocolate cake for dessert for their 10th birthday. The next day we had some buns left over, so for brunch, lunch, we had breakfast burgers. So I just cooked up a whole bunch of fried eggs and a whole bunch of bacon, stuck it all on a platter, put the buns on the platter as well, and just let them go at it, and that was sort of lunch. Darryl and I had that as well. One of those things that we're going to have to adapt with the new ketovore style is leftovers breads that we eat a lot for the lunch the next day is not going to be the thing, but I suppose we just have the bacon and eggs instead. Now, we had the goose hatch some goslings. We've not had much success with the geese here. So the geese turned up on their own. They just turned up one day and we had geese, which is fine. We fed them, and I actually thought they were ducks at first because I've never really been that close to geese and realised they were geese later. So they are pilgrim geese. They're auto-sexing. Males are white, females are mottled. And now they had a nest last year and they hatched 12 babies, and we were sitting there going, what are we going to do with 12 geese? However, they are not the greatest parents, and only one survived. So she had this tendency to just wander off, and if some got left behind in the heat or stuck anywhere, she just kept on walking, and they died and got picked off by predators. So this year, when she nested, we decided to do was fence her in once they hatched. So once the babies had hatched, we created a perimeter around her so that she was stuck in the same spot. She could get out and the other geese could get in and out, but the babies couldn't. She hatched only 3, and a few days later we found one dead, so she had only 2. So she was in there for a couple of weeks, and it was great. And then she got out. And then we sort of went, well, we've done what we can do. I don't know what else we can do, sort of thing. And then within an hour of her getting out, one was stuck in some wire and one was left behind, and they were both distressed. So we took them off her. There was about 48 hours of her standing outside the door screaming at us and the babies crying inside. But we did have a brooder full of chicks, so they did go in with a brooder full of chicks that were big enough to tolerate. And so after 48 hours, they all gave up. Now, we've just moved the baby geese, the goslings, into the pen with the second batch of baby chickens, so I will show that today on the Sunday chat video. But they are very cute, but they're huge. But very cute. So that's what, so we had her hatch, and we had a whole bunch of issues with her as well, so that was something else that occurred in this week. I've also been working on seedlings, getting my plants all started and seeds started and everything else, but we haven't had enough beds in the garden sorted to be able to plant stuff out, and we're still sort of figuring things out. It also is still cold overnight. Like, it was this morning, it was 8 degrees when I got up at 5:30, so it's, it's still pretty cold overnight, so we've got time, but we need to get a few more beds done. So I ended up giving away a lot of these seedlings to a neighbour because I don't have the anywhere to put them, and they're better to be used by someone else. We also had the kids getting baptized. So Darryl takes the kids to church, and they wanted to be baptized at the church, and so he took them along for that. We bought them some fancy-ish clothes last shopping trip. People would have seen it. I just bought them some button-up shirts and shorts and things like that. So I did get a couple of photos of them with the slightly fancier outfits, but it was after they'd already come back, and I didn't go, so I didn't get photos of the actual ceremony, but they were sort of scruffy even by the time I got the photos because it was done afterwards. But you know, they still was nice to do that. And Sonnet pulled faces in every photo, but I didn't realise until afterwards. So you know, and I made some treats for them to take. It was requested that I make some bread, so I made a bunch of baguettes and some little dense sort of dipping rolls, and had caramelised onion jam there for them as well. We also had the lamb turn up, of course, so that was a lot of work, getting up at 5:30 every morning to feed her a bottle and just, you know, general care of her. And that first week, it was a little touch and go. She was pretty scrawny. She was pretty heavily reliant on me being there at all times and things like that. So that first week or two was pretty hard, but she's pulled through now. She's huge. I'll show her on the video that I filmed today with how much she's grown, because she's massive and she's loud and she's annoying. And yeah, but I'll show you her today, but we had her arrive as well. And then after that, I started with all the products for the trees, of course, product for the shop, of course, figuring out exactly what I was going to do and what the settings were going to need to be, and you know, all that sort of stuff. So I was cutting out trees, I was designing the stars, I was doing all that kind of stuff to get it, you know, just working right before I got the shop up and getting the website going. So it was just a really busy span of time, and I obviously didn't spend a lot of time in the kitchen, or the time that I did spend, I didn't turn the camera on because it was just trying to get stuff done so that we were eating, but also, you know, just doing it. We had a lot of quick meals, like frozen whole chickens thrown in the pressure cooker, which I put in my stories on Facebook and Instagram, and a lot of people said, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. So when you have a pressure cooker, you can cook whole frozen chickens straight from the freezer. So when I buy whole chickens, I tend to throw them straight in the freezer, and then during the month when I need a quick meal, I pull them out, I stick them in a pressure cooker with, you know, I put it in my buffalo here because I got two chooks in there, and so I put about a quart of water in the bottom because you need a decent amount of liquid in this size pressure cooker. But Susan did send me a Presto pressure cooker, one of the 8-quart ones, and it's perfect for a single chook. It just doesn't fit two. And then I season the chickens and turn it on, and now I cooked it for 90 minutes. These were 2.2 kilo chickens, and there was 2 of them, but it's 45 to 90 minutes depending on the size of the chicken, and whether you're using an Instant Pot or using a stovetop one, that sort of thing. But I do 90, and you have it just up out of the water slightly, and then when you go to pull it out, it just falls apart as you pull it out, but it's perfectly moist and tasty, and really it's just easy. So basically it's just roast chicken meal. We had it with veggies and mash and gravy sort of thing, but it's really good for shredded chicken as well, to just pull it apart once you've done it, because it just falls apart. So that's a really great way to be able to buy the chickens when I do my 2 monthly shop and not have to do any prep right then. I can just throw them frozen straight into the freezer. Sorry, they're not frozen when I get them fresh, straight into the freezer to freeze. Then I must have ridden out my slump of filming, or gotten to some point of, you know, needing to do bulk stuff, because I had a really big day then, which I managed to film. So I started off this day making flatbread dough for lunch. I use my Thermomix for this as it's a fairly small size dough for me, and it just kneads really well for a small batch. It's great for that sort of thing. I got that put aside to proof. I decanted one of my goon bags of coconut cream into jars for the fridge and put the excess aside to use later. I mixed up some hamburger bun dough, the light brioche dough on the website, and put it into a container to proof as well. The kids have been loving this hamburger dough, so I've made it a few times this month. Then I got started on a huge pot of chicken stock. So I had a massive amount of bones in the freezer taking up room, and I want to get the freezer cleaned out before the next shop. So I filled my buffalo canning pot up. So this is 30 litres, I think. It's stainless steel, so it's perfect for cooking in as well as canning. This is what I did the chickens in as well. The Prestos are aluminium, so you're not really supposed to cook in them, but if it's a low acid product, I don't have a problem with it, not really. But because I have the stainless steel one, I may as well use the stainless steel one, and it's bigger. So I put a couple of onions in, some celery, salt and pepper. Normally I'd put carrots in there too, but we didn't have any at the moment. Filled it up to a max line with water and got it cooking. You can put all sorts of things in your stock. You can put zucchini, I put sweet potato, all those sorts of things, but the stock will be cloudy, and I'm looking to can this, so I wanted it to be clear-ish. So I didn't want to put any of those things that turn into sort of a mush, because they really heavily colour your stock. Now we're going to put it under pressure for 90 minutes. So I filled it up to the max line with water, put it under pressure for 90 minutes. The reason I do at least 90 minutes is because at the end of 90 minutes, those chicken bones will be smushable by hand. You can actually just turn them into a mush, a puree, even just with your fingers. And what I do is I pull the big bits of onion and garlic out, and then I puree everything else, and that becomes wet dog food for however long it lasts. And they get a scoop of that in there with their dry kibble for dinner. Once that was... Oh, and also I get asked, just a note, that all the Ziploc bags from the scraps get put back inside each other and stored in the freezer for next time they're needed, so I reuse these, and I just mark what goes in them. They get stored in the freezer, so that works well. Once that was started, I worked on the flatbreads, dividing them all up into balls, and then rolling them out and cooking them off in the cast iron. I don't remember what we served these with. We might have had leftover chicken from the night before or something. I'm not sure. But whilst not the healthiest meal, even on their own, they're super tasty. So sometimes the kids just have them as bread, have them as sandwiches with peanut butter and honey or jam or a bit of ham and mayo or whatever. Sometimes the flatbreads are used purposely just as sandwich bread. And sometimes we cook up, so I do have butter chicken on the shelf, so we heat up a jar of butter chicken and use them as a dip for that too. So I don't remember what was done this day. I didn't film it, but we did flatbreads. Then I got to using the coconut cream that was left in the goon bag. So I like to put water in it and shake and get every last little bit out. So I always try to make something with it after decanting it. So I decant it, the bulk of it, and then I leave a little bit behind that I'm going to add water to, and it ends up being more coconut milk than coconut cream. I made some Smoothie Pops up first for the kids. I have these silicone molds. I also have the Kavik ones, which I talk about all the time, and I love the Kavik ones. They are a great shape. They're smooth, and they look like little magnums, and they're great if you're doing them dipped in chocolate, or if you're putting like whole slices of things like kiwi fruit and stuff in them to make them look really pretty. But they have to be flat when they're frozen, and I don't always have enough room to put a big baking tray in my freezer with the ice block molds flat on them. So I picked up these blue ones, and I think it was from Amazon. I'll see if I can find a link. I really like them because they're so compact. You can pick them up without them having to be on a tray. They fit in the freezer really nicely, and you can have, I've only got 2 of them, but I think I might buy some more because I like to make these Smoothie Pops up in bulk, because the whole point of making them is that the kids can have 2 or 3 a day in summer because they're just small portions of smoothie. So I might get some more out, because with 6 kids, this only makes 24. That's only 4 each. So it goes really quick. Now, the smoothies that I put in them are just whatever I've got. So whatever frozen fruit I've got in the fridge, I've got freezer. I've got some bananas, some custard apple, some plum, and some strawberries at the moment, I think. So I just pull out whatever I've got and throw it in with some coconut cream and normally a bit of protein powder, just because it has a sweetener in it as well, but also just to bump the protein in them, so that they're, it's already, if I'm doing it with yogurt, it's not as much of an issue, but I tend to put it in there. It's flavour, it's sweetness, and I have this original peanut butter Macro Mike one that I got cheap, and the kids really like it, that peanut butter and fruit flavour. They enjoy it, so I put some of that in there as well. I also made up a batch of chocolate ice cream for my Ninja Creami. So I really should get some videos showing how I'm making this. Over summer I'll make it a lot more. We're not going through it as quickly at the moment because it's still not quite hot. But as I keep on going, I'll have to share them. So my chocolate ice cream recipe, I grind up some chocolate chips in the Thermix, and then I just add the rest of the custard ingredients: egg yolks, coconut cream or milk, sugar, salt, and cook it up. I didn't have any cocoa, so I also added some of the cookies and cream protein powder to give that extra chocolate boost, but it also gives it a little bit more of a creamy texture when you blend it up, because of the emulsifiers in the protein powder. So it gives it a little bit of an extra chocolate boost, but also it gives a boost of protein as well, which I think for the kids it's something that more filling is good, and then put it in the creamy containers. So there's 2 full ones for the kids, and there's a small one for Darryl or I to have at some point. Maybe while I'm away, Darryl will want some chocolate ice cream. So that goes in the freezer and ready to go within sort of 24 hours. Though the freezer, because it's warm when it's going to the freezer, sometimes you really need to leave it a good 48 hours. If you're putting cold products into the cups and then sticking them in the freezer, 24 hours is good. But if it's warm, sometimes it really needs a good 48 hours before you can spin it. Otherwise, you just end up with a thick shake. I also had the beef to work through. So this is the bags of beef trim that I buy from Costco. I use it for a variety of things. I mince it up as mince, but I also get some lean pieces out to dice up for things. So this beef trim is what they use to make their mince. But I don't like buying mince because you have to process it within sort of 48 hours of getting it home. But it also bleeds all over everything because it gets compacted and yeah. So when you go to Costco, if you knock on the butcher's door, you can ask for a bag of beef trim. And that box of beef trim is the beef that they make their mince with, but it's vacuum sealed up in 2 or 3 containers in the box depending on the weight that you get, and you can't ask for a specific weight. Each box is what it is. I've had from 15 to 25 kilos in each box. It's $9.99 a kilo, the same price as the mince, but it's just so much more convenient because in the bottom of that big chest fridge that I've got, it can sit there for the full 8 weeks if that's what's needed, because it's vacuum sealed, it's beef, and it's super cold in the bottom of my chest freezer. So it works really well for me to buy it this way. And then what I do is I pull it out and I split it up. So I cut all the bits, I cut it all up. If there's some lean bits in there, I might dice it up for some slow cooked beef pie and things like that. We don't want too much in the way of any sort of gristle or anything. A little bit of fat's fine, but it depends on the cuts that you get, which again is random. It really depends on which box you get and which parts of the animal it's come from. And then if there's some nice pieces that I can cross-grain, slice really thin, I will make stir-fry meat out of it again. And again, some of it's still pretty tough. I do velvet it, but some of it's still pretty tough because it's all different cuts of meat, because that's what it is. Mince is made from pieces that you can't necessarily turn into anything else, which is we are fine with. I will buy some rump this month, I think, so that I can make some really nice tender stir-fry and stuff for Darryl and I, because we're going to be eating so much of the meat this month compared to normal. But so I split it all up. A bowl full of the lean beef, the diced beef, a bowl full of some stir-fry beef if I can, and the rest goes into a container for mincing. So once it's all split up, I decide where I'm going to put it or what I'm going to do with it. This particular day, the diced beef for slow cook pie filling, whatever, went into the fridge because it's later in the day, so I might do that tomorrow or the next day. And then the stuff for the mince, the same. I stuck it back in the fridge, get really nice and cold, because you want to mince it straight out of the fridge as well. You want it all nice and cold. The other thing is that in summer, I mentioned about the mincer being an issue. If you stick the mincer parts in the freezer before you use it, when it's a warmer day, that always helps too. So I velveted the stir-fry pieces with the intent to use them for dinner. I hadn't really decided what I was doing, but that was the intent. I used a bit of bicarb, cornstarch, chicken stock powder, bouillon, and some soy sauce, massaged it well, and left it to permeate the meat for at least an hour. But you can leave it for quite a few hours, and you can even freeze it at this point and defrost it and use it later. The burger dough had actually way overproofed at this point. I'd totally forgotten about it in what I was doing. So I shaped it anyway, split it into about 75, 80 gram balls, and placed it on the trays. Gave it an egg wash, sprinkled with sesame seeds, let it get a little puffy again, and baked it off. They turned out fine. They're not quite as fluffy as my normal, but definitely still more than edible. We actually ended up cooking up some of that velveted steak and had steak burgers, like eggs and mayo and that sort of thing, as steak burgers for dinner, because I could have done noodles or something, I suppose. I could have made some sort of stir fry over rice or done like a stir fry udon noodle thing that I normally do, but I didn't. And then I'd forgotten I'd done burger buns, and I don't even know what I made the burger buns for initially. I think just because the kids have been wanting them lately. So anyway, we had steak burgers. So that was another, I don't know how long it was. I didn't look at the dates. It could be 10 days worth of food prep. So I did a lot. There was obviously plenty of other meals in there because I still fed everyone, but I just didn't pull the camera out. I don't know. But anyway, that was another set of food prep, planning, meal preserving, all that sort of stuff for this shopping trip that was in August. And it's, as I said, it's Sunday. So I go on the next trip on Tuesday. So I'm cramming stuff in. So I have at least one more food video for you, which is the canning of that chicken stock, and I think I made sausage rolls and stuff with the mince because I minced the beef and made sausage rolls and stuff. So I will get that out in the next day or so. And then I'll film today's video, which is I'll show the garden off and all that sort of stuff. And then I'll do the planning video. So they're the next sort of 3 up in the next week. And then I will try and do the shop with me videos that I always suck at, but I will give it a good go. I am getting better every month, I think, at being able to tolerate the fact that people look at me funny when I'm talking to my phone. But hey. So thank you for watching again, guys, and I will see you on the next video.